Welcome back to the People Business, where we explore the stories, the strategies, and the lessons behind the people who lead with impact. I am your host, Frank Favaro, and joining me today is Dan Flanagan. Dan is president and co-founder of Brain Enrichment Initiative, and also he is director of national channel sales at GMS. Dan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on the People Business. So let's get started today and tell me a little bit about your story and how you got started in business and how you got started in sales.
Yeah. So I think, the sales career really started after my sophomore year of college.
Okay.
So I played baseball in college at a Division II school in West Virginia, University of Charleston. And I decided that I was going to leave Charleston after my sophomore year. And really the reason I was leaving is they wouldn't let me hit. So my first 2 years I spent all my time in the bullpen, racking up innings and pitches as a reliever. And I was always a left-handed power hitter. Played short my whole life and went down there to do that, and it changed quickly. So I went to coach after sophomore year and said, "Hey, coach, if you don't let me hit, I'm looking to go somewhere that I can do that." And he goes, "Well, let me sleep on this." He goes, "Why don't you show up at my office at 8 o'clock the next day?" So 8 o'clock the next day, I walk into his office, and he's not in there. He's talking to the secretary, and all my transfer paperwork and everything is completed, sitting on his desk. And I'm like, wow. So I sit down, he comes in, he used to call me Dub. He'd be like, "Hey, Dub, absolute pleasure, working with you here. And thanks for everything that you've done, but we don't have a spot for you to hit." So I ended up leaving Charleston, came back home, and I was basically sleeping on my father's couch in a small little apartment in Copley. And probably the fourth or fifth day, he walked in and threw a newspaper at me and was like, "You need to get a job and get out of here." And I was like, "You're right." So he's like, go through this newspaper and see if you can find something. So I get to like page 5 and I find Vector Marketing, and they're like $9.95 an appointment. You sell these knives. I'm like, I'll try it.
I remember those advertisements.
Do you?
Yeah, I was going through the same paper trying to find a job myself. So go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So So I show up to Fairlawn, guy named Mike Malatich. Never forget this guy, awesome guy. And he says, "You need $144 for a demo set.
Okay.
You sell cutlery to all your friends and families, parents, and then you spread it through referrals and all that." And I'm like, I think I could do this. It was a really nice product that I'm sure a lot of your listeners and viewers are familiar with an awesome forever guarantee. But the problem is I didn't have $144.
Okay.
I probably didn't have $14.
Yeah.
So I said, "Mike, I don't have $144. And he's like, "You can't come up with it?" And I'm like, "I doubt it." And he goes, "What about your dad, mom?" At the time, it just wasn't happening. And we'll dive into some of that why here probably pretty soon. But so I drove across town, actually to Sagamore, Northfield area where my grandfather lived, knocked on his door and said, "Hey, Grandpa, I need $144. And he's like, "Absolutely not." He's like, that will be gone by the weekend through beer money. I'm not funding your beer money. And I'm like, "No, this is for a set of knives, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to cut this rope and leather, and I'm going to sell this cutlery and help with my student loans and start making money." And he goes, "No." And I go, "Okay, here's the deal. You give me $144 in 1 month, I'll give you 10% of the 100. I'll give you the 144 and 10% interest." He's like, 30 days. Gives me a check for $144. I drive across town, give it to Mike Malatich, get my knives. I ended up going through all like the Revere. I grew up in Richfield, so all of the Revere parents, and did pretty good, but was fizzling out of leads. And my second summer selling Cutco, I got a call from one of the general managers, and he said, "Hey, I just took this leadership role in this other company. I'm leaving Cutco. I want you to go out to Middlefield, Ohio, and meet this guy Bill Yoder. And go talk to Bill Yoder about Cutco knives, and he'll spread you throughout Middlefield." So at the time, I had a 1984 Pontiac Sunbird that, no joke, every 40 miles, I'd have to put a gallon of water in the radiator. This thing would steam up, and it was even a mess when I was in high school. Like, I was our quarterback, and I would roll into Revere, pretty affluent district, right? And people would be driving like really nice cars, and here comes Revere's quarterback steaming out of his engine.
The steam.
This is real stuff. So anyway, I drive out to Middlefield. I find a gas station. You know, there's no phones, none of that, right? So I'm like, how am I going to find Bill Yoder? Didn't have an address, just had this name. For whatever reason, I can't remember why I didn't get the address. So I go into this gas station. I asked this sweet little lady, do you know a Bill Yoder? She starts laughing at me. I'm like, what are you laughing at? She's like, Bill Yoder? She's like, Yoder's the most popular name in this town. There's probably 60 Yoders. Right. And I go, well, do you know a Bill? And she's like, yes, I know several. I'm like, can you give me directions to one? And she's like, sure. So she pulls out a piece of paper, draws this map, and I park my car, leave my car at the gas station. I have my bag of knives and, you know, some decent clothes on or whatever, polo, slacks. And I'm walking through Middlefield on dirt roads, and I pull up to this house, and there's 15 kids in the front yard playing. And I'm like, hey, is Mr. Bill Yoder here? And they're like, and they didn't say anything to me. They just sprinted to the barn, all the kids. And then all of a sudden, this gentleman walks out and was like, can I help you? And I'm like, yes. Do you know Greg Kleibscheidel? And he's like, yes. I was like, so you're Bill Yoder that has purchased Cutco knives before? He goes, absolutely. I love Cutco. I go, well, Greg's no longer with us. He gave me your name. He yells to his wife, who comes out to make sure everything, you know, is copacetic or whatever, and get a thing of lemonade and get Dan set up in the back. So I'm like, I don't have no idea what's going on here. So I go around the house, and she's got lemonade set up, and I'm pitching her and her husband with 14 kids, end up selling close to $10,000 worth of Cutco knives. He was going to use all the knives to buy Christmas gifts for his family.
Oh, wow.
And I left with a $10,000 order and 4 referrals. And so then I would walk to those 4 referrals, sell them, those 4 turned to 4. So over the course of a summer, I sold like $60,000 worth of Cutco knives to the Amish. And I'm like, that's probably what I need to be doing and studying is sales, along with trying to play ball or whatever. But that's when I first knew it. And in 2000, I graduated in 2008 from college. I ended up transferring to a school in Pennsylvania. And in 08, I came out, you know, crash of the economy. I was going on job interviews. It was 100 candidates and me, and I had no, you know, experience other than this Cutco job, and I wouldn't land a job. So I waited and bartended for a while. And then in 2011, I got a call from my grandmother actually about this company in Richfield called GMS. And they sell this insurance and HR. And I said, Grandma, do I need to be licensed? And she goes, I have no idea. Call the owner, send me a resume. So I did, set up the interview. The interview was going like very bad until they asked me to tell me a story of how they think I could be successful in sales. So I told that story.
You told that
VP
story.
of sales. He goes, this interview's over. Can you show up on Monday? Can you dress a little bit better than how you're dressed today? Like I didn't have like nice attire or anything. And then I came in Monday and started going after it. And I've been at GMS ever since. I've been there 15 years.
That is absolutely amazing. So what did you learn about, because a lot of people can go and make that one big sale and then get referrals, but fizzle out, right? What did you learn that allowed you to keep that momentum going, and how were you able to keep that momentum going? What were you doing? Because it's easy to, you know, I got 4 leads, but then those leads go to nothing, and now here I am again with nothing, right?
Yeah.
How did you keep it going?
Mindset.
Okay.
So I would tell you that my first 9 to 10, maybe 12 months at GMS was a lot of failure. And it was a lot of watching other people ring the bell and bring in deals. And I was sitting at my desk and I was having a hard time on the phones and I was struggling in my career. And a lot of it had to do with my attitude. I just didn't have a very good attitude. Thought that, you know, for whatever reason, my Cutco experience was going to bring me success in professional sales, selling what I think is probably the hardest thing to sell, which is the PEO, which is payroll, risk management, benefits, HR in one swoop. It's a big time change for a company. But there was an event, Frank, that happened about 10 months into my career. I was living in a sort of a, not a horrible part of Akron, but a rough part of Akron, in a 400 square foot apartment above in a house, but in an apartment above a mom that was raising 3 kids, and her husband was doing 4 years in a federal penitentiary. And this is where I started at GMS. And one night, probably drank too many beers, fell asleep on my couch, and I woke up to just a riddling of gunshots. And I remember running into my bedroom, throwing on a pair of shorts, walking outside, and they were, already setting up the tape. And I look, and there's a dead gentleman laying on the ground. And I guess he, 3 miles previous, had shot at the police, got in a high-speed chase through Akron, and then they got him to sort of, pull over whatever in front of my house, and he gets out and starts shooting at him again, and they shot him dead right in front of my house. And so that moment of kind of seeing that kid dead in the street outside my house, and I was still screwing around and doing whatever I wanted to do, and I wasn't serious about my career, kind of flipped the switch. And so that's when I really dove back into my career and became a better learner, a better listener, started asking better questions. But I think the biggest thing was I started to learn to be me, and just be authentic and stop trying to be somebody that you're not. I spent 10 years or 10 months doing that, like sort of trying to be the other people in my office or some professional salespeople that I, Googled or went on YouTube.
Right.
But when I made that mind switch of like, you just got to be Dan, and Dan's got some talents, and I can be special at this, but I've got to dive in. And then that law of attraction started happening where, because of my authenticism and because of the fact that I was getting better at my, my niche and my craft, and I was asking better questions, and I was taking more of a you-centric approach, I was all you-centric at that point of solving problems and getting to the root causes of those issues. That was solving so many problems and converting those into sales that those people wanted to tell their friends. This guy came in and solved 5 or 6, 7 different business issues that I had that were either derailing my company or prohibiting me from getting to the next level of my business, that they then went and shared those things with others. Or, I put a little feet to their fire and said, hey, you love what we do. Is there anybody else that you can think that I can help that's in your network?
Such a powerful question.
And then,
right? That's huge.
I sort of took off from there. But it was a lot of failure. It was a lot of adversity. It was a lot of just doing the wrong things and bad attitude, and switching that opened up a lot of doors.
You had a epiphany, so to speak, right? You had a moment where you looked in the mirror, you didn't like what you saw.
No.
You knew you weren't going after it, giving it your best. You knew you weren't being who you were meant to be, right? And
correct.
We talk a lot about authenticity in the world today, right? And it's a word it's thrown around. But what does it really mean in the day-to-day, in the front lines, to be authentic? What's it really look like?
I mean, just to be real, like, not to be somebody that you're not. But I think for me, at this point in my career, and we'll talk about BEI, I'm sure, it's being vulnerable. And it's being a human being. Human beings make mistakes. They're not perfect. It goes back to, just being who I am, and just not really caring what other people think about who I am. And that's how you build sort of immediate, 7 seconds to build trust or credibility is, just be you, and good eye contact and good handshake, but also just, be the person that God made you to be, or that's what I believe, and see where it goes from there.
But we're built here, right? And we come and like, this is how you sell this or this. And we have all these things, and maybe they're not who we are, right? Maybe it don't align with us and what we are here to do. And, it's like, it's really hard to take someone else's entire script, right? And go, use it. Like, how did you take what other people did, right? But do it Dan's way, authentically?
I led with them. So I think it starts with just researching your buyer and understanding, where they've come from. And then when you're in the meeting, applying sort of their past state and what you've learned, and maybe it's accolades, achievements, maybe it's certain things that you've seen on Google or their LinkedIn page or whatever. And you ask them good questions on that to get them to open up on the human level to build trust and credibility. And then, go to their current state, like, tell me what's going on right now in your business. What's going well? What do you think you could do better? What's prohibiting you to get from the next level? What do you want to achieve by the end of the year?
Right.
And then get into the future state, right? We've got to always be selling on the future state, but you have to have an understanding of the current and past state,
Right.
to be able to sell on the future state. So tell me about the vision. What do you want to achieve in the next 5 to 10 years? Tell me about the people in your business that sort of are shrinking capacity, or they're not as efficient as they can be. And just getting a good understanding of all those things. And then immediately, by taking that trajectory of a business conversation, what I've learned is that you sort of check the emotional boxes, right? People buy an emotion, justify with logic. And, so the trust and credibility is naturally happen about making it all about them, making it all about you, Frank. And how can I solve your problems? How can I get to the root causes of your issues? And then focus on what are the solutions that can really solve the root cause. Like I always tell my salespeople, you can't, like, if you're a good gardener and I'm not a good, I'm okay, but and you're trying to get like your dandelions or your weeds out, you don't just cut the weed at the stem, right? You got to get a shovel and dig out the root, or else the weed's going to come back. And as a professional salesperson that's trying to change the trajectory of their client's business or their life, right? It's a lot of times we're selling something that can impact their life,
100%.
free up their life.
Yeah.
Their why they do what they do every day. But you have to get to the roots, and you got to dig into the dirt,
Have to.
right? And turn that over and figure out, why do they have this challenge? Why is their health insurance costs out of control? Why do they now look at human capital or HR as something that's important? Why do they have 10 workers' comp claims a year? Like, figure out what's going on underneath the hood, as sort of like as a mechanic. And, you're doing some diagnostic stuff. And then what you're doing really is you're understanding those causes of those problems. And then you're taking your solution or your value proposition and you're applying it to those root causes.
I love it.
And then just asking them,
Right.
how fast do you want to change this?
Right. Because,
Or do you not want to change it?
or maybe you don't, but you're right. I mean, because like that, see, and I think that's where a lot of, we're not going to make this an entire, hour on sales, but selling is actually helping someone, right? You're either taking advantage or you're giving it.
Yeah.
Right. And the way you have approached your career is you're giving advantage. By working with me, I'm going to give you the advantage, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what you're doing, because the questions you're asking show that you're after not just what's good for you, but what's best for them, right?
Of course.
And that's where it's at. And I love that. That's where, and you and I both had we had a connection with the Go-Giver philosophy, right? In the book,
Sure.
The Go-Giver,
Yeah.
which, early in your career, it sounded like maybe like the character Joe, right? That might have been you.
That was me.
That was you.
Yeah, it was all about Joe. Joe's quota, Joe's lack of financial, lack of being able to pay his bills, living above a single mom in this cruddy apartment, and how do I get out of it? And, instead of just getting out of Dan's way,
Right.
right? And just focusing on the person that I'm in front of, and how do I impact their life or their business?
I love that. That's really what the greatest salespeople in the world do. And I've interviewed, a lot of them, and it's a very almost identical playbook of doing those things, because at the end of the day, selling actually is helping and giving. Unfortunately, we have so many people that do it the wrong way, right? That it gives it a negative connotation, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And people think like, I go in a room and I'll be in a conference and I'll say, what is your first thing that pops in your head when you hear the word salesperson? And it's,
Yeah.
negativity, snake oil, used car, like again, all these phrases. And I said, how can you ever go out into the world and be a successful salesperson when you have a deep rooted negative belief about sales? And you can't.
Yeah.
Right? You have to understand that you're in a very honorable profession, first and foremost. And you and I are both salespeople. Like growing up, like we are both, that's why I love talking about it with you, even though it wasn't on the agenda, right? To go this detailed, but I love it. And so do you.
Absolutely. Everything's sales.
Everything.
Life is sales. I mean, this morning I was trying to sell to my 4.5-year-old and 2-year-old that they needed to get away from me while I was dealing with an issue to get out of the house. And I'm constantly selling my wife.
Well, yeah.
And she's not buying a lot, but
we're all in sales. And like, that's it. Like, because we're all trying to influence outcomes we desire.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Kids, eat the broccoli.
Yeah.
Right? Teachers, take the test to the students,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like we're trying to get them to do the things that benefit them. And that's really what sales is.
Yeah.
Right? We're trying to influence positive things for people. And that's when you're successful doing it, like you. So you've had this successful super career, right? And now you go to GMS and you've had this epiphany. And now all of a sudden the mindset starts to change, right? Where'd you go from there?
So I sold for 7 years as a sales rep. Since 2016 and 17, I was our National Salesperson of the Year. In 2018, I was off to a good year, and I got a call from our owner about 29 days into the sales manager position being posted at our headquarters in Richfield.
Okay.
So we're headquartered in Richfield between Akron and Cleveland, and we have 23 other offices around the country. But the mothership is here. GMS is really built in Northeast Ohio. Our strongest brand is in Northeast Ohio. But he calls me 29 days in and he goes, "Where's your resume?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Why haven't you applied for this job?" And I'm like, "I'm not ready for this. I just want to sell. I'm happy." He goes, "Nobody's ever ready. But that resume better be in my inbox by the end of the day." So I remember walking back to my computer, walking back in the building. I was in my car when he called me in the parking lot, and I could just come back from a meeting, walk in, fill out my resume, get that over, and then go through the process. And I was our sales manager in Richfield for 2.5 years. And then I got promoted to our vice president of sales of the Northeast region. So I was responsible I had 2 teams in greater Northeast Ohio. I had a team in Detroit, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Buffalo. And I would do a lot of traveling. And so I did that up until a couple years ago, where I would say in 2021, when I was traveling the country, I'd started building this program, this nonprofit that we'll get into. And I was building BEI at night when I was in hotel rooms. And
Wow.
I was building GMS during the day, or, helping us build GMS during the day. And I remember coming home from Philadelphia one trip, and my wife was a total basket case, and rightfully so. I'd been gone for 4 days. She was dealing with a newborn and a 2.5-year-old, going through the 2s and 3s, and I was gone for days, and she was like, "Here are the kids. I need to get out of here for a little bit." And then that night, she's like, "We got to do something different. Like, I'm going to either need to get more help at home." And I go, "Well, what about this plan?" And I told her about this plan that I had for going on in my mind for months, of that I wanted to get back to what I did best, which was building relationships, building our circle of influence network at GMS, which was bankers, accountants, lawyers, financial advisors, and other insurance people. Those are the biggest influencers to decision makers in our particular industry. And going back to selling, and then I could be at home. And then I would be at home more, right? And I'd be more present at home. But then I can also build the Brain Enrichment Initiative, certainly a lot better and a lot faster. And I can't do it all. So I proposed this idea to our owner and our chief revenue officer at the time. And our owner, Mike, was like, "Yeah, go, you and the CRO figure this out." And so that's not what I do now. Is I work on our channels every day and build these relationships that I had built that really had kind of fell on their face when I went into leadership. And so to recultivating those and try to wrapping our clients around with these advisors, and naturally reciprocity, reciprocally they now give, and they, pump me leads and continues to build our business. But then simultaneously I can also do, gives me more time, especially in the evenings or early mornings and the weekends of building BEI and
Right.
what I'm super passionate about.
So I love that. And you took your passion, right? And what you did, do a GMS, right? But then you were thinking about something else, right? You were working during the day, but at night you had this other idea, which is the Brain Enrichment Initiative. Tell me a little bit about how you came up with this idea, where it came from, and really what it is.
Yeah. So it's, it's a passion project. It's a passion story. So my life has been riddled, Frank, with mental illness. And,
Okay.
and really what I learned through a book that I read in 2019 is it's really a brain illness. My dad had his first panic attack when he was 1. He was first diagnosed with clinical depression when I was 5. And, we grew up in Richfield on 3 acres. All we knew was sports. When we got off the bus, it was baseball, basketball, football. It was building forts. It was spending time. We had beautiful gardens. We had an amazing childhood up until about when I was almost 15.
Okay.
And my dad, I'm the oldest of 3. My younger brother's 18 months younger. And then my sister, Brianna, who's the co-founder of BEI, is 7 years younger.
Okay.
But as the oldest, there's things that you see that the younger ones don't see, right? You're naturally sort of a natural born leader. You're kind of always kind of on surveillance. You see things. I even see it in my oldest daughter already. But my dad was isolating himself a lot, and I could tell that and then there were some instances that I saw as a kid that I probably shouldn't have saw, but we don't really need to get into that. But when I was almost 15, I was playing catch with my brother in the driveway. He caught my whole life. I pitched my whole life. We had always a great battery. The battery always ended up in some sort of fight, of course. But my dad came out and he's like, "Hey guys, like I'm going to be gone for a while." And I'm like, "Well, where are you going?" And he's like, "Well, I'm going to go get some help. I'm really struggling." And we're like, "Okay," and thinking Dad's going to be home in a few days or something. So he goes into St. Elizabeth Hospital in Youngstown, and he has over 30 electroconvulsive therapies done over the course of weeks to really help with, increasing his blood flow, helping with his neural pathways. And ECT is designed to really help with the automatic negative thoughts. And
is that where they shock the brain?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. In a way, yeah, that's exactly what they do. So he was doing that, and then he went through a rehabilitation program at St. Elizabeth Hospital. And then my uncle at the time was living off 5th Avenue in Youngstown. And he moved in with him and was kind of going back and forth from the hospital and trying to get back on his feet. And I was in the prime of my life. I was a 3-sport athlete, good student, not great student. I was already, going into my sophomore year, I was getting letters from coaches and starting to get a lot of interest, especially on the baseball and football side. Life was awesome, man. Until I lost my hero. My dad was always my hero. Always phenomenal athlete. He ran a couple different businesses. He had a business where he helped overlooked high school athletes get scholarships to college. And then him and my mom also ran a collection agency.
Oh, wow.
And just looked up to him in every single way. And when he went away, my mom was holding down a 7-to-7 at Waste Management, trying to keep, bread and butter on the table, mortgage paid. And I started doing whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. There was no dad around anymore. The guidance was gone. The oversight was gone. The accountability was gone. The validation was gone. And my mom was doing the best she could to raise 3 kids, deal with the situation with her husband who was gone, hold down a job. And I started drinking and doing whatever I wanted at a young age. And I would participate in anything that was going to mask the pain of my father being away. And I'd do this stuff before games, practices. It truly didn't matter. Made tons of mistakes in high school. By the grace of God, get to college, play college ball, study business, get through college. How I got through college, I have no idea. But in my early 20s, my brother developed a brain illness. We don't need to go into diagnosis or whatever, but a very rough illness. And I continued to just do what I want to do. Just, even though I'm going through the sales career and I had, a couple different things that transpired, I got serious on the business side and the sales side, but I wasn't always serious about my life. I was still finding ways to mask the pain. And May 6, 2019, it was a decision that I made the night of May 5th. I said, I'm done. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Tomorrow I'm going to wake up. I'm going to call the Cleveland Clinic and I'm going to get myself into an outpatient program. And that's what I did. And I went through a 6-month outpatient program at the Cleveland Clinic. I knew I had a lot of problems. I had a lot of defects of character. And I went through this program and I had a lot of people that helped me throughout this program. Got into AA, committed my life back to my Savior, which for me is Jesus Christ, and told him I'm going to go to work and I'm going to go to war. And I got in the gym. I've always been an athlete, always been sort of a fitness rat, but I'd lost some of that over the course of time when I was drinking and doing whatever I wanted to do. And so I got in the gym, 4:45, 5 a.m.s, no excuses, almost pretty much every single day. And I was listening to podcasts and videos of credible men that had overcome a lot of things in their life. My neural pathways in my brain were so disturbed. It was very victim mindset, woe is me, all this stuff was going on. So about a year in, I'm doing, building this foundation of sobriety, doing really well. Work's taken to a whole nother level because now I'm working with a sober mind. Amazing how that works. And I read this book called I was listening to a podcast by Jocko, leaving a business meeting in Mentor. He's got this world-renowned psychiatrist, Daniel Amen, who had built the Amen clinics and had invented this thing called brain SPECT imaging, which they actually give a pinpoint diagnosis to mental illness. They'll say with 100% certainty based on blood flow, your neural pathways, all these different true scans that they do. In the real world, all they do is throw darts, and it's one medication after another. It's guesswork, going through all these different SSRIs. It's a mess, and it creates a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration. But anyway, they're talking about this process, and they talk about this book called The End of Mental Illness that he just published. And I'm like, I got to read this. So even before I even got home, I'm on Amazon. It comes, and a Saturday I peel through this book, and I remember getting through a certain stage in the book where my whole life flashed before my eyes of like all the trauma and the experiences and the pain and everything. And I had this idea. And the idea was to build out a curriculum or an education that was designed to help kids with self-management, social awareness, help them with relational things of like how to build good relationships, what to do with adversity, and then brain education. Because I was learning all these things in this book that I'd never learned in my life. Like the different, right? And so anyway, I get with my sister, who's an educator, and we start to go to work on this curriculum. Really, she built this curriculum. And then we start talking to people, and they're like, yeah, it's curriculum. Educators are very, they use a lot of proprietary curriculum. I don't know if this is going to work. And so we had to find another differentiator other than the brain health piece. And so then I started thinking about this mentorship idea that my dad and uncle had presented about 6 months previous of like kids need more mentors. And, as an athlete or salesperson, I was always looking up to somebody or.
Absolutely.
So basically today we have this BI program, this curriculum, this 60 different lessons that is taught through peer-to-peer mentorship, where our mentorship facilitator teaches it to a 9th or 10th grader. They learn it sort of enough to be dangerous. They're not going to be perfect by any means. And then they work one-on-one in sessions in school or after school with a young mentee who's in 6th, 7th, and 8th grader. And kids teach kids our curriculum, and we oversee it. And we're trying to basically help the youth get in front of mental illness risk factors.
Wow.
That was long. So sorry.
But that's amazing because there's so many places. So like my son is far more interested in learning from a 10th grader than he is from another teacher, let's say, right? Because it's different, right? They're more on the same level, right? So going back also, like thinking about this, you gave me so much there and my mind is spinning. So this BEI, Brain Enrichment Initiative, came about starting with your father, probably.
Yeah.
Right?
Father, brother,
right?
my own mistakes.
Your own mistakes. But having your father, like, that experience too, like, had to be very traumatic. Like, and not even understanding, like, because I was a kid and my life got turned upside down as well when my parents all of a sudden divorced and I had no idea it was coming. And then it's like in 30 days, you're moving into a whole new place and your dad's leaving. And like you have and now same situation. My mom was, single mom, all she cares, and she did the best she could, right? But trying to put food on the table for us, my brother and I was just like you, like there I am after school. We're doing whatever we want, right? Before practice, we're doing whatever we want, right? And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, this was crazy, right? And having that situation, and then for you to have, so many other additional steps that took place, and then for you to and then all of a sudden you have this idea of serving and giving back and doing something that's really, really important right now in this world, because when we think about kids today, right? Like we have an epidemic on our hands.
Full epidemic.
Probably
the biggest epidemic in the world.
But that most people are not really talking about.
They just said that mental illness just surpassed cancer as the #1 illness now in the world.
Wow.
1 out of 8 people in the world now have some form of mental illness, which I believe to be brain illness.
Okay.
1 out of 5 adults in the United States have it. The stat that really inspired me was I had my youngest daughter was born in 21, and we just launched the program, and I read this study of 18,500 girls in 5 states that were surveyed on have they ever considered taking their own life, and 6% of the 18,500 had thought of that. So I did some quick math, and I'm like, holy moly, and then I looked up stats of how many girls were in that range in the United States. Then I did the math, and I'm like, if this is happening here, it's probably happening everywhere. And I just kept thinking about Brooklyn, my daughter, and growing up in this world that's a lot different than the world we grew up in, Frank. There's so much distraction. There's so much phone, social media, all these different things. And so then when we launched in May of 25, they conducted the same survey coming out of 2024. Same sample, about 19,000 girls, same states, 38%.
Wow.
It went from 6 to 38% in 4 years. And it really was about 3.5 years. And Cameron, my youngest, was just born. So now I had 2 girls.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I got to, because when you're building a business, you have so many different fears and can I do this? And, is this right? And is this what I should be doing? And I think these stats was like, God just was saying, do you see this? This is this is a huge problem, and you can go out and solve it. And you can solve it through your passion of an understanding of watching not only your loved ones, but yourself go through it. You could build something that can bless our youth and start giving them a foundation, something that they can go to when life gets hard, or they don't even need to get hard. They're just learning, and they learn different skill sets and life skill sets that can really help them, be contributors in whatever they're trying to do, or society, or an employer, or just really become the best version of who they're meant to be.
It starts, though, I imagine, it's got to start with parents, right? Like this has to start with parents. I mean,
yeah.
I'm out at a restaurant, right? We're sitting there I'm with my family, and I see other people, and every single person at the table is just staring at their phone, right? The entire dinner. That's it. No one's even looking up at each other to eat, right? Like, it's not just kids, it's parents.
Mm-hmm.
It's all of us. Like, what do we have to, like, what's the recipe What's the blueprint here to fix this?
Well, I don't think it's going to ever get fixed. It's
not
too
gonna get
deep
fixed.
to
Okay.
get fixed, right?
So how do we
But can we make an
reduce
impact?
or impact? Yes.
Yeah. Can we start to really help with it?
What do we do?
Sure. You know, the phone thing is one thing. It's horrible. I even am guilty of this. I see the
guilty.
look on my 4.5-year-old's face when she sees my the head buried in my emails at night. It's like, Dad, play with me, play with me, play with me. And the more that they see us do it, they emulate everything we do. So then it's okay for them to get on the iPad. It's okay for them to get in front of the phone. And the blue light and a lot of the animation going on in these things. And then you take it to a whole nother level with social media. It impacts the brain, and it impacts your dopamine levels, your serotonin levels. It jacks up your cortisol. It breaches neural pathways. It slows down blood activity.
When you say breaches neural pathways, what's that mean?
Yeah. So, you know, basically there's disturbance within your brain. So the neurons and everything should be firing at all times.
Okay.
Like our brains are probably like this all day long. Well, the more that we're entrenched in this phone and social and all these different things, now those pathways are now restricted.
Oh.
And so blood slows down, electricity slowing down within our minds, or really our brains. And the more unhealthy that our brain is, like our mind always follows our brain. So if we're not taking care of our brain, which is really everything, then where's our mind at? And most of the time, you know, it's our thoughts. Our thoughts start to get disturbed. You know, I like think of this social thing with young girls. They are all over this social thing, and they're constantly comparing themselves to others. What are other girls doing? What are they wearing? What vacations are their parents taking them on? And this comparison thing creates bitterness. And when we get bitter, we start to resent. We start to resent our own parents because why don't I have this life? We start to resent ourselves. We start to resent our friends. And then we get into this very big problem of depression. And so really, you know, it's the social, it's the phones. I think it has a lot to do with our nutrition. You know, what are we feeding these kids in schools? You know, we don't need to dive into this, but, you know, American food's got a lot of issues.
Yes.
And it's a big disturbance on our brain. But what I was getting at earlier is our thoughts, right? And so for me, when I first got cleaned up in 19, my thoughts were a mess.
Sure.
And I'm a bigger believer that our strongest thoughts is where our life is headed.
Absolutely.
100%.
Whatever
right?
has market share of our mind, that's where it's going.
Read this book called Winning the War in Your Mind by Craig Groeschel, and that's what he talked about. And I always go back to that book, but there's a lot of thought disorders going on and comparison, and I'm not worthy, and I'm not enough, and it's creating a lot of weakness. And so our program is really designed to build leaders early, but build grit and build resilience and understand that, give kids an understanding that life is hard. And to me, there's a why behind that. Like, your purpose never comes before the pain. It's always pain before purpose, or it's always adversity or challenge or circumstance or tribulation that comes before why am I here? Why am I really on earth?
Absolutely.
So helping them understand that.
Yeah. And you need that adversity, right?
Yes.
It's leaning into it.
Yes.
As opposed to why me? Why'd this happen? Right? I mean, you got to have that. So
Exactly.
walk me through working with, because you're working with schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's that look like? Let's say that there's some schools that are watching this today, you know, that are interested in how do we get this in our school?
Yeah.
Like, walk me through that.
So, I mean, you know, we got to get the superintendent on board. We got to get the school board on board. They already know that this is the biggest problem with their school. It's not even close.
They're experiencing it in the day-to-day because kids can't stop pulling their phones out.
Yes.
Right?
It is the number one topic on every school board agenda every single month and every single school is the behavioral health of our students. And it's drastically declining. A lot of schools right now and a lot of these programs are designed to be reactive. Like, we can send a kid here when they already have symptoms, when they already are experiencing wanting to maybe do something detrimental, right? Our program is the opposite. Our program is designed to help get out in front of this and be proactive. And it goes back to the vulnerability piece, Frank. You know, we're both former athletes. And I remember reading a lot about your career as a wrestler. And I can almost guarantee that you had great coaches throughout your wrestling career. But when a stud Division I wrestler showed up at practice who had tons of accolades, you were spending more time with him than you were a coach. And you were a sponge. And you would just take it all in. And you want to go home with that guy, right? And learn more probably after practice. That's what we want in this program, is kids teach kids because of vulnerability. Kids are more vulnerable with their peers than they are their parents or a teacher lecturing them.
I love that.
You probably know this as being a dad, right? You have adolescent children. They're not going to tell you everything.
No.
And
I wish they would, but they don't.
But they're going to tell Ricky, who's maybe a year older or, 2 years older, and they're aspiring to be Ricky, and they're going to tell Ricky everything. And so that's what's happened in our program, is these kids are extremely vulnerable, and they open up about what's going on in their minds, what's going on in their life, what's going on in their school life, what's going on in their home life. And then that mentor works with them to, again, not cure this.
Sure,
But
just you can't.
No.
I mean, like, it's too big.
Too big. But it's the love piece. Like,
Okay.
And it's the peer-to-peer mentorship piece where they can relate with each other. And, most of the time these mentors are dealing with similar situations or certainly problems that they can help, if they've been through them 2, 3, 4 years prior, they can help that young mentee. So when we were piloting this program in the spring of 25 in Akron Public Schools, we went into the heart of the city in Bookdale and Akron East, and we had a young girl at one of our schools, no names. She was suicidal on day one in the mentee mentorship program, and she was being bullied by 2 other kids that were also in our program. And she comes firing out with this in this one-on-one session to the point where she was kind of loud about it. And not only did her mentor and her kind of buddy in the program hear this and become disturbed by it and certainly empathetic to what she was feeling, but 2 or 3 other mentors did as well. And they pulled this young girl into the hall. We didn't do any of this. Like, my sister at the time was doing all the educating and the facilitating because we didn't have a staff, and she was running around like a wild woman. But she stepped back and watched these mentors take this girl in the hallway, sit her down. They sat down, got on her level, and just said, help us understand what's going on. And she opened up like a can of worms and told all these different problems. And so then we were able to work with her through the mentorship program, through the facilitator that's the BEI employee in the program, and really work with her. In over 12 weeks, no joke, this little girl who was broken became a leader. And she had a smile and vibrancy and all of these different things that she didn't have 12 weeks earlier. And a lot of it had to do with this peer-to-peer piece, but also the education that we give them on the importance of self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, why they're so important, but then helping her understand her brain and how to nourish it the right way. So that she can move the needle on her behavioral health and get better. And now she's doing a lot better.
Wow.
Because of that. So today we're actually in a little bit of a standstill where we've got a lot of schools in the hopper. We're running into a lot of funding issues where schools don't have money to pay for our program. Our program is certainly not free. There's a lot of challenges in the grant world. We're seeking donors at a high level that have a passion for this. Whether they lost a loved one from suicide, or they have a son that's dealing with anxiety disorder or depression, or a nephew, or they have a business, or they have a foundation, or they have the means to be able to participate in this program, not only emotionally, but financially. We need those people. I've got big time goals here and big time dreams. And in order to achieve what we need to achieve, we need dollars, and we need schools to start being more vulnerable about how can we get more creative with this problem, and having more conversations, breaking the stigma of all of this and saying, this is a real life problem. How can we all come together to really help these kids? Because if we don't, man, I mean, they're our future.
They are.
Just like we were the future
100%.
of today, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, they're our future. They're our future of this nation and this world. And if we don't help them, man, who knows where this is going to go.
What are the goals?
All right. So the goals are, short-term goals, so we've got 3 or 4 schools lined up for the fall already. So we're going to get into those schools and start to make an impact on those schools. What I've learned with schools is that, you do right in that school and you bring value, they talk. It's sort of like sales. Not much like business, right?
Yeah.
And you bring a good value, then that value will spread. We've already impacted, I'd say 30 or 40 kids in the program.
Wow.
That's way more than I even wanted to at the beginning. I'm like, if we can impact one kid, change one kid from doing something that is life altering, not only to them, but their loved ones, great. But then that one turned to 2, turned to 4. Now we're at about, I would say 30 or 40 kids that we've truly impacted. We also are doing a lot of education work. We're doing a lot of things in the community. We're a very community front-facing organization where we want to get involved with other organizations, not only that are doing what we're doing or similar things that we're doing, but organizations that are giving back and providing value. But we want to be dominant in Summit County. We want to then move to Cuyahoga County. We want to move into the west part of like the Sandusky, Huron area. I now live in Warren, so I want to bring it east and then figure out where we're at.
Okay.
And then grow it south and then start an expansion.
We're in Northeast Ohio. This is a Northeast Ohio channel that we're bringing this episode to today. Where can people find you if they're interested in learning more about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So bei-neo.org is our website.
Okay.
There's a contact us page. I think our website's pretty good. It's really thorough, gives a good understanding of things. You can do some research on Pain to Purpose, probably tie my name into that in Google or BEI.
Okay.
You'll get some podcasts, you'll get some content, you'll get some things that are out there now. On Instagram, it's BEI-NEO. Facebook and LinkedIn, just search Brain Enrichment Initiative. It'll pop up, follow us, in those resources. I also post a bunch of stuff on my personal stuff, which is DQ Flan, which is just FLAN. You could follow us there. A lot of brain health stuff that I'm constantly putting out there, just to help others, man, and just to bless others. That's it.
It's and you are, and this is impactful, and it's already showing, the fruit, right, that it's bearing because of the people that it's impacting. As we sign off here today, I got one more question for you. You ready?
Anytime.
All right. So as we walk away from this episode, what's one thing you want to stick in people's minds?
It goes back to a friend of mine and somebody that participated early on in this BEI thing. It was a well-known Cleveland sports guy, Bernie Kosar. Talks about it all the time. You matter. And it's cliche, right? But it's true. We all matter. We all have God-given skill sets that we have, that we can go out and not only better our own lives, but better other lives. And I'm a big believer that whatever you do best with the least amount of effort is probably your blessing and your calling. So think about those things and try to make a difference. And if we all had this collective attitude together to make a difference, this world would be a better place. And certainly Northeast Ohio would continue to be an awesome place to grow up and live. And so I would say that.
I love it. My pastor always says we were created on purpose for purpose, right?
That's right.
And I love that. And it's so true because we're here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's opportunity.
Absolutely.
So what are we doing about it?
That's right.
Well, you're doing something, man. So I appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on The People Business.
Thank you, Frank.
Till next time, thank you for joining us.